Sup fellow nerds, it's good to see you, and yes, that was an Oblivion t-shirt last week. We theme park sex lords need to stick together. Anyway, once upon time, my A key broke. That's the joke. No big intro today, spoilers are ahead. Don't really know why I've not said that on my reviews yet, I just assume you've all seen it. But anyway, spoilers nonetheless. Let's get on with it. So, Swarm is about to Thanos the fuck out of Yaz, kinda, but the Doctor has a plan. She grabs Dan, stands atop a Mori podium like Yaz and Vinda, drags them into a time storm and finally hides both her friends and herself in their respective timelines. Okay. Definitely an interesting angle. Let's see how things play out from here. So, which member of Team TARDIS are we going to look at first? How about none of them? How about a new character instead? Chris! So this is Belle, and when she's not fighting off horrendous CGI, she's traversing a broken, seemingly dying universe to find her betrothed in hope that he'll get to meet their unborn child. But who is she chasing? Vinda. Whew, you know what? Thank goodness for that. I was worried with how much Yaz was rocking up in his weird timeline thing in this episode that there was going to be a thing between them, and obviously now he's got a partner and a baby that's not going to happen, and I'm actually very happy about that. Anyway, once she has her hands on a Lupari ship, she comes face to face with the Cybermen. After a pretty underwhelming fight sequence with said Cybermen, one of the Cyber dudes is on the floor dying and is just regaling the whole plan and its opinions on love and emotion and just... What? Surely a Cyberman, irrelevant of whether it's on its deathbed or not, wouldn't just randomly, tell the enemy what they're doing and how many Cybermen there are, but pfft, alas, maybe they do. Admittedly, this bit of information isn't relevant to the plot at all as far as we're aware. This is seemingly quite a fleeting appearance of the Cybermen, which is a shame for Cybermen fans, but would it really just sit there and just say everything? Exposition for the sake of exposition. Great, wonderful. Anyway. On the other side of that coin, we got context as to why Vinda was a disgraced soldier. But all that stuff with the Grand Serpent was, as far as I know, just a bit of character building for Vinda and just irrelevant otherwise. So after all of the stuff happens in this episode, which we'll get to, Vinda goes home. Belle is somewhere in the universe still chasing him, and after being given a direct line to the Doctor, for Vinda, arguably that's it. Is there something coming that's going to mean Vinda comes back into the spotlight? I mean, since it's been given so much time in this episode to establish that character and introduce his partner, assumedly, yes, but we don't know what that is yet. Also, when Belle is watching that recording, she mentions that he might look different. Now, assumedly, she's pregnant, early days, and it's only going to be 9 months, unless she's just, alien who looks like a humanoid number 319. That's just how it is in Doctor Who. So if it potentially isn't that long until she sees him again, how would he look different? He's not going to get immediately older. Does he age quicker? Or, as Twitter's going into meltdown about, does he regenerate? So it seems that social media is under the pretense that this baby, under the influence of, the flux happening and time being buggered, is going to emerge somewhat special. Kind of like how River Song did when being, conceived and grown within the time vortex. Could this child be the timeless child? Could Belle and Vinda be the Doctor's parents? Or could a whole chunk of this episode been dedicated to a completely irrelevant plot point? I would say that the latter is more than likely not the case. I doubt Chibnall is that stupid, but there's a lot of fan theories going around about this. But just wrapping up on Belle, yeah, another character being thrown into the mix that wasn't just a single character for that episode like Mrs. Seacole in episode 2, it's not a great start. Before I move on to the rest of the TARDIS crew, let's talk about the CGI. While there were some pretty good visuals to be expected, we then had some blunders. First up, the Daleks. Love me some Daleks, as you know, but there was one major glaring flaw with these guys. Their neck rings move with the dome. Pardon my French, but who the absolute fuck gets that wrong? It's like putting the plunger and the gun stick the wrong way around or painting the TARDIS bright orange. Surely somebody proof watching this at the BBC, a big Doctor Who fan, I'd hope, would go, hang on a minute. They don't do that. I didn't actually spot this in my first watch because I was more irked at the time by the other thing wrong with some of the CGI this week. Now, I'm no special effects expert, but I do know that when you're putting something, compositing something into a shot, the way to make it look plausibly there is by lighting it correctly. And first things first, these Daleks don't look lit correctly at all. There's far too much contrast and they look almost oversaturated for the environment they're in, though this shot at the end looks a lot better. Also, these death particles, no wait, I can't use that, that's been done already. Okay, these blue pricks are lit even worse, because they're not lit at all. Look at how much they oddly stick out in the outdoor shots with Belle, and it's the same sort of thing down here in the tunnels with Liverpool 1820, who, side note, also cropped up and buggered off with no more explanation. Thanks, Chibnall. These guys don't at all seem to be affected by the lights in the tunnels, but that's because they might be emitting light themselves, hence why they're so, well, bright on screen. But why then were the cave walls not being illuminated, nor Dan's face as they flew past? Yuck, they looked horrible. Anyway, CGI rant over. Let's talk about the Doctor, because that is really where the meat of this story lies. Since they're reliving their old timelines amidst the glitching, the Doctor's gone back to the old days, the time she doesn't remember, and giving us some context as to why Swarm and Azure assumedly have it out for the Doctor. And look, here's Ruth. This is the Doctor working for the Division, closing in on Atropos and thwarting whatever this pair are actually doing. Nice thrones, by the way. Yaz, Dan and Vinda are in place of the other Division operatives, Dan specifically being Carvanista. Seeing 13 and the Fugitive Doctor bash heads again is always a good thing, so thank you for that. And also the idea of going back and exploring the Division through this means of, reliving old timelines is pretty neat. A nice way to drip feed things in without it feeling massively shoehorned. I don't want Division to be explained in one fell swoop right now, but being drip fed bits and pieces to tell me you've not forgotten about it, that's good to me. Though Yaz's timeline exploration was spent doing not that much. Remember she's a police officer? Remember she has a family? Anyway, she's being stalked by a Weeping Angel because we need to give them a bit more screen time leading into the next chapter, Village of the Angels. Depending on how things go with Vinda and Belle going through the rest of Flux and maybe even into the specials, but I'd assume just Flux, if all that stuff ends up being moderately irrelevant, why couldn't we have spent more of that runtime exploring Vinda and Belle being spent exploring Yaz? In last series' Can You Hear Me, arguably the best part about that episode was going back and finding out more about Yaz. Genuinely was the best bit about that, and that door was wide open to do something like that again, and yet Chibnall decided to go, haha, no, new character. Yaz gets overlooked again. Sure, just give the new guy and his partner we met like 10 minutes ago all the spotlight, rather than putting the person we've been craving for more backstory to over the last like 3 bloody years some time in the spotlight. But what about Dan though? He's seen chatting to Diane, and by Jove, you guys were right, Diane is Passenger, or at least she's inside him. Not like that. Turns out he's a walking, maybe talking Genesis arc, and she's inside after her running with Azure back in chapter 1. Since Swarm and Azure are all-knowing creatures, they know exactly who everyone seems to be, maybe they went back and captured Diane as a means of, emotional leverage over Dan. What happens if, say, Yaz's sister ends up inside there too, and Vinda's wife, Belle? The leverage arc, the Genesis leverage arc, Passenger, yeah. As said, Dan also bumped into Liverpool 1820, but yeah, otherwise Dan's stuff was also kind of irrelevant. Unless Chibnall is trying to set up Dan and Diane as a couple we really need to care about. Obviously there is something between them, they're going to date in chapter 1, but they're going to really hammer it home over the course of the series because something's going to happen to one of them. Amy's money is on Dan, and that's because he's got a heart of gold, so either he's going to pop his clogs, or he's going to be revealed as the biggest douchebag in the entire Whoniverse because he created the Flux, he's Swarm's dad, he angered Eccleston to leave in 2005, and he's the twat who got Robot Wars cancelled again. Thanks, Dan. The only other thing of note today was that the Doctor, after arguing with the Maury amidst the time storm, found herself with a character credited as Orsok. She knows the Doctor has been bouncing about within these timelines, and she tells her that the Flux is man-made, it's deliberate, and it's destroying that universe because of her. Sure, that's more thing to add to the already bustling wheelbarrow of things we had from chapter 1. That and the Timeless Child Division stuff from last series. Great. Exciting stuff nonetheless, but that, along with putting Swarm and Azure's past with the Fugitive Doctor into the spotlight, it's basically the only stuff of immediate note that happened in that episode. Yes, Vinda and Belle and their unborn child will be relevant in some way, shape or form in the future, but still. A lot of that episode kind of felt like fluff, and now that we're in the latter half of the series, it also feels like time wasted. What was important in the episode could have taken up, say, half the runtime, and the other half could have been spent exploring Yaz's story, as said earlier, or even kicking off the events of Village of the Angels in a little more robust sense rather than, oh god, there's one in Yaz's phone, oh shit, it has the TARDIS! So it was a mixed bag, some good, some fluff, some bad. In Chapter 1, Chris opened the narrative Pandora's box and its contents spilled all over the table. In Chapter 2, he took a good handful of that and neatly plopped it back in. And we hoped, over the course of Flux, he would continue to just slowly tuck everything back into the box and close it, and it'll be nice and neat, tidy, and satisfying. Instead, this week, we got a spoonful more of stuff just on top of everything else that's currently spilt out over the table. But as said, there were some crucial plot points that were quite exciting to see, but in the grand scheme of things, a lot of that felt like relative nonsense in the wider noise of the Flux. Things were kicking off well, but I think this is the first hiccup in this series. But I'm not going to completely write off this episode or write off the series because of this. And while War of the Sontarans felt like quote-unquote classic NuWho, this felt more like good old Chibbers. Good old maybe not being the right term. This week is getting a 4. Not a complete dumpster fire, but also nowhere near as good as something like War of the Sontarans, and I would argue it was worse than Chapter 1. Somehow, even though loads of stuff happened in Chapter 1, as said, it was very busy, and then it felt like next to nothing happened in this episode. Really. Definitely the weakest of the 3 chapters so far. But I've missed something. I've given it my score, that score of 4 is going to stick, but there's something that Doctor Who did this week that so many TV shows and films get wrong. A trope that infuriates me as someone who is a big fan of the medium and has sunk hundreds of hours into that space. Video games. Remember that picture that came out last week of Yaz and the Doctor sat on a sofa with controllers? I asked you on Twitter what they were playing, got some good responses, thank you for that. Maybe we'll stream The Last Dalek at some point in the future, that Flash game was the shit. But I was thinking, I wonder whether they're going to fall into the same trap that every other TV show does. And while they did avoid showing the screen for a lot of that scene, eventually, look, 2 people playing on a console, 1 person playing on the screen. Why do TV shows keep getting that wrong? It's a massively silly gripe, but why do TV shows keep getting that wrong? But what did you think? Looking across social media, people seem to be pretty split on this, and I appear to be in the minority of, okay. I didn't completely hate it, nor did I completely lose my shit in loving every single second of that episode, because personally I don't really know how you could. But anyway, let me know your thoughts and your scores in the comments section below. As said, love reading them. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more Doctor Who content, including obviously Flux reviews coming your way. And please check out mine and my fiance's Amy's Escaping Castebra's Doctor Who Rewatch podcast. You might have seen all the episodes are being re-uploaded onto my channel as of right now, and we've got some more stuff coming too. But that's it. Thank you very much for watching and subsequently supporting me. I really, really do appreciate it. And until I see you again, take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week.